Good morning, Facebook. Monday morning, and I'm on a little bit of a roll because this is the third week in a row that I've remembered to do a Facebook Live for you guys so that I've got some regular information coming through to you so you know where to find information if you need it. So today I wanted to talk about what would happen if you passed away without having a will. When someone passes away without a will, the situation is called intestacy. So the person dies intestate. And a couple of weeks ago, when I explained why I went into the field of wills and estates, it was particularly because of the situation where I came across a young couple who had passed away without wills. And their two children had been left without guardians, and the families were fighting over those kids and the money. So there's obviously situations where it is preferable to have a will, but in a very few minor situations, it is okay not to have a will. And if you pass away without a will, no, your money does not all go to the government. In fact, there's legislation in every state in Australia as to what actually happens if you pass away without a will. So under the laws of intestacy in Victoria, and they only just changed in November 2017, so it isn't even quite 12 months that we've had this situation. So the order on which an estate goes is, firstly, if this person passes away without a will and they have a spouse, everything goes to the spouse. Pretty straightforward. That is so long as it's not a blended family. If the couple has children only from that relationship, then the children have to wait until the second parent passes away, which is fair, right? Everything goes to the spouse in the first instance. However, if it's a blended family situation, and one spouse passes away, not everything will go to the remaining spouse. There will be some that needs to be divided up with the kids of the deceased who are not also kids of the spouse, if that makes sense. So in that situation, the spouse gets around the first $450,000 in the estate, and then the balance of the estate gets divided 50-50, and the spouse gets another 50%, and the other 50% gets divided up between the stepchildren. Interesting situation would be if there's multiple spouses. So it's not multiple spouses at once. It's if someone has been in a marriage and they've separated and they've got a new spouse all within 6 years. So you can see that that is quite likely a scenario because people do get together with new people within a couple of years of a breakup. So in that scenario, if there is no will, unfortunately, the spouse's claim gets divided up between all the spouses of the last 6 years, which is odd. So the ex-wife, and this is if they haven't settled, gets to divide it up with the new girlfriend. So you can see that that would be a very difficult situation. So if that is your situation, much more preferable to have a will than have your ex and your new spouse fighting it out while they're supposed to be grieving for you. Okay, then we get to the situation, which is less common, but it does often happen, where there are no spouse. Hi Nellie, how you going? No spouse, no children. So this person has never married, never had children. Then we start looking to broader family members. So in that situation, if it's a young person, for example, no spouse, no children, it goes to their parents equally. So you can see in a situation where a young person was raised particularly by one parent and not the other, they might not want it to be divided up equally between their parents, but if they haven't done a will, they don't get the choice. If there are no spouse, no children, no parents, it gets divided up between brothers and sisters. And if any of the brothers and sisters have passed away, that share goes down the line to nephews and nieces. So only if a person passes away without a will, does not have spouse, children, parents, brothers and sisters, nephews and nieces, does it end up going to the government. Okay, so there's quite a few hurdles to cover. So having said all that, if someone passes away without a will, there's obviously a format where family is still taken care of to a degree. If you don't have a will, you don't get a say in how that happens. The legislation says how it happens. So another couple of reasons to do a will, other than having the government determine what happens to your estate, is firstly, you want to be able to say who controls your estate as well. So if you weren't comfortable with your spouse controlling your estate, maybe you thought, well, he or she will be too upset and it will be too big a job. There's no way of changing that if you don't have a will. Under intestacy, the person with the most entitlement is the person who is able to run the estate. And so you can see if you've got children who are inheriting and they're fighting it out, they're all equally entitled to run the estate. And so that could be quite difficult. And finally, the other thing, other than not being able to appoint guardians if you don't have a will, is that if you die intestate and it does go down the line to children, they're going to inherit at 18. So unless you make a will, you can't specify that your children are to inherit later than 18. Okay, so there's some really good reasons as to why to have a will, but also an explanation as to what would happen if you don't. So it isn't the end of the world. But if you like control, much better to have a will because it's cheaper to do a good will than have a mess later. So hopefully that answers some questions. Challenge today, speak to someone you know who doesn't have a will about this and why they should have one or what would happen if they did pass away. So anyway, I'll see you next Monday again.